This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Now the back Zurhaar, he backs it, he kicks it, all the floor from Duursma! This is the speed of the culture, 3 bounces down the wing, he keeps going, 4 bounces. Joining the chorus, the Can't Lose Kangas, AFLW Premiers.
Hello and welcome back once again to North Pod, and we didn't win. We did not win. We didn't lose, but a draw against the Brisbane Lions, which should be a positive, should feel good, but I don't know, we should have won that game. We had so many blunders and so many opportunities to win that game, and we just weren't quite able to do it. It's a sign of where we're at, and I think by and large, a lot of positives to take out of the fact that we competed, we were still in the game. This is the reigning premiers. It's not exactly an easy matchup by any means. They're in decent form. I think they were 7-1 coming into the game, so nothing wrong with their form. But yeah, just not quite able to get across the line. Had so many chances. We'll talk about it as the podcast goes on. But I think my overwhelming feeling was disappointment, tinged with satisfaction, of course, but disappointment because it's another blown opportunity. I think we should have won 2 of our last 3 games, if we're being honest, just based on the way that we were playing within them. This is not a case of it being unfair or us being unlucky. I think it's a case of us just not knowing how to win. And it's great that we're close. It's great that we're nearly there, but we need to take the next step, and we need to take it fast. So let's jump into rule review and talk all about what was quite a game. We start with the team selection, as always, and 3 changes for this game. One of them forced with, we know, Jackson Archer being injured, so he came out of the side. Alongside Callan Dawson and Will Phillips, who were dropped. I think Callan Dawson, it's just a case of us experimenting with those key defenders, and Will Phillips really had to make way for George Wardlaw. There was a fair bit of consternation amongst some of the North fans, feeling as though Wardlaw was pretty unlucky to miss out, and I understand that perspective. Like, I'd love Willfield. I don't know if I said Wardlaw or Willfield then. Anyway, I'd love Willfield to stay in the side. I think he does bring a lot defensively, and I think I've said this ad nauseum. I think he is a nice kick, but if you're picking between Willfield and Wardlaw at the moment, that's an easy choice, and I just don't know how else we can fit Will Phillips into the side. You're not dropping Luke Parker. You can't drop Jai Simpkin at the moment. You're not dropping LDU. Tom Powell's probably the one that you'd look at who's the next midfielder up, but I think that his output definitely could be higher, but I don't think he's been droppable at this stage. So look, it is what it is. We've got lots of midfielders. We've got McKercher, and McKercher's probably a winger, but I think Finn O'Sullivan's going to be a midfielder in the future. We've got him playing either at halfback or at half forward. We're fiddling around with plenty of positions there, and we just don't have room for Willfield if we're close to fully fit, unfortunately. So it is what it is. Toby Pink and Aidan Corr were the other 2 coming in. I guess you're swapping one of them for Jackson Archer was a need, but certainly Callan Dawson, I think we're fiddling. Pink and Dawson, not quite the same type of player. Dawson certainly provides a lot more drive and run and carry off half back, but I think Toby Pink's probably a little bit better in a contest and a bit more of a marking player. So I think similar level of player, although they do play different roles. And then Aidan Corr is a flexible defender. I think that of the 2, between him and Logue, I definitely think he was the one that was a bit more unlucky to be dropped. I certainly didn't mind the standards being set, but it looks to me as though we brought him in with a pretty clear plan for how we wanted him to play and who we wanted him matching up on. And as we'll talk about, I think that really played out positively for us. So yeah, look, like I said, plenty of people that were upset on Willfield's behalf, and I get it, but I probably see myself as one of his bigger fans, and I find it hard to argue with because his form just hasn't quite matched up with the other midfielders, and Look, there might be games where we mix up the balance and we want to play an extra midfielder, but I just, at this stage, I think it's fair to say he's on the fringes. You could probably mount an argument that maybe he's more deserving of a spot in the side than the sub Bailey Scott, who played his second game as sub. I'd be happy to have that argument because I think the sub at this stage is, it's not irrelevant. It's just a position that really is it's not winning you or losing you games. It's a player that you need that can play, a couple of different positions or can come in and really have an impact with their speed and their aggression. We certainly didn't see Bailey Scott do that in this game, and I'm not sure that Wilfield would either, but I guess at least he'd provide you with another rotation through the middle. Anyway, it is what it is. That's how he went in. In terms of the final score, it's 71 all, 10, 11, 71 for both sides. And let's walk through the game. There's certainly some elements of it that I'm not looking forward to reliving. A shocking start. Straight out the gate, we conceded a goal and then conceded the next centre clearance as well. Let Brisbane really just get, not momentum, but certainly put some scoreboard distance between us and them immediately. You get their forwards and their midfield into the game. That's not the way we wanted to start. I thought we steadied well. After that, Big X sort of seemed to drop back and play loose, or not loose, but he seemed to drop back and play behind the footy for a couple of minutes, took a couple of marks, which I thought helped steady us. Charlie Comben also had a nice first quarter. He took a couple of intercept possessions and marks and was able to get the ball going our way, which I thought was good. We saw Wardlaw with a couple of really nice kicks, including the set-up kick to Zurhaar for our early goal. So I was really impressed and really pleased with the way that we bounced back. I thought that's the sort of thing and the response that we want to see. We've seen too often us drop our heads after we concede a goal or two and allow the opposition to kick more than two or three and ends up putting a lot of distance between us and them. And I thought, by and large, we stemmed the flow and were able to break even, so to speak. Unfortunately, we were just no good, going forward and going inside 50 with our kicks. It was, we've seen this so many times, but just really poor entries, not enough movement up the ground to provide options. There's a lot of times where our halfbacks just had absolutely nothing to kick to, and as a result we're either kicking to a contest or just turning it over. But I don't think it was Sheezel and Hardiman and Caleb Daniels' fault. I thought just not a lot of movement at all up the ground, which didn't provide us with any options. And then when there was space, we were bombing it rather than putting it to our teammates' advantage. I can't tell you, you'd know how many times we've heard that. It's just, at this point, I think it's one of those things where as we get a bit more confident, we'll know the options to bite off and we'll back in our players, but we just weren't seeing that often enough from us. McKercher had an absolute mare on the wing, took a couple of bounces, couldn't assess an option, had his kick smothered, then recovered it, then turned it over with an inboard kick. He seems to be making a mistake like that once a game at the moment. It's hard to evaluate to what extent it's his fault versus it's the players up the ground, but one way or another, he can't. I mean, he made two mistakes in a row there, and he just can't do that. Even if he's kicking long to a contest, a 50-50, it's better than it being smothered. And then when he recovers it, you've got options. You can either get yourself corralled out of bounds, or again, you just kick it long and at least put some meterage on it. But he went short inboard and had it turned over. So, he's having a bit of a second-year blues at the moment. And it's hard to find or hard to see exactly what role he's being asked to play. Last year, he was spending most of his time at half-back, and I thought he had a pretty well-defined role, whereas this year, he has spent some time at half-back. He's spent a lot of time on the wing. He's been a high half-forward at times, and I just think he's struggled with, settling himself into a role, and certainly making a lot more stakes this year than he was last year. It's great to see him bursting off half-back, but I just think we want to see a little bit more from him throughout the game. So that was unfortunate. We had a couple of out in the fulls in this first quarter, which is really disappointing. And I guess when you see the final score being a draw, it really comes back to bite you that we had these out in the fulls. We had a couple more where we didn't score, or it was out in the full later in the game as well. So, it's one of those things where in the moment, particularly in the first quarter, you don't think too much about it. You go, oh, well, that's just missed. The difference between a point and out in the full is negligible. Some would say it's about a point, but it comes back to bite you. Just one of these opportunities where, we could have scored a point, and it's a different story. So that hurts. I thought Caleb Daniel and Shees were pretty busy off off half back in the first quarter, trying their best to repel the footy and get it up the ground. We saw a big head clash with Luke McDonald. My understanding is that he's been cleared, but it was one of those ones where you could have absolutely seen the AFL deciding that he didn't quite have enough the duty of care. I'm pleased to see that accidents are still allowed to happen. I guess to describe it to you, Luke McDonald was going to try and intercept or put a fist on for a ball sort of between half back and the wing. It was pretty clear he wasn't going to get to the contest, so I thought he kind of slowed down. The Brisbane player took a mark in front of him, maybe five or so metres in front of him, but there was, let me find the player here. I think it was Berry that ran into him. Essentially, Berry blind turned and Luke McDonald was right there. So they had a bit of a head clash. Both of them had some blood rushing off their heads. Luke McDonald was okay. He was able to come back on, but Berry was substituted out with the concussion. So that was a bit of a nervous moment for me, knowing what's happened to Paul Curtis and what we saw happen with Jackson Archer last year. It's these ones where I think they're not trying to do anything wrong, but they find themselves in a bit of an awkward situation. You just never know in this day and age what's going to happen. Anyway, I'm recording this Monday evening, and to my knowledge, Luke McDonald has been cleared and is not going to be suspended, which is good. But that was a bit of a bloody moment in the first quarter. And I thought, like I said, we steadied well. We still didn't play an amazing first quarter by any stretch, but I thought at least we were able to stem the flow. We went in 6-15 down at quarter time. So low scoring, not conceding a heap of goals, and able to slow down Brisbane after their fast start. Moving into the second quarter, I thought we had a really nice start, kicked some goals, had some clearances, dominated the play early on, which was looking really nice. But unfortunately, defensively, we let ourselves down. Really let the Lions come through the middle far too easily. And we saw them doing exactly what Port Adelaide was able to do to us a couple of weeks ago, where they just play on at all costs, back themselves in. They're really clean with their hands to players running past. They don't have to slow down at all. And that's when they're most effective. That's not just Brisbane. That's anyone playing us. If you can get speed on the ball and make sure that teammates are running past and not having to break stride, you're gonna tear us up, because we're just not quite at the level where we're able to defend one-on-one effectively enough. We're not able to manufacture these outnumbers in our back half effectively often enough. So we saw them doing that really well. One of those chains resulted in Eric Hipwood kicking a goal from the goal square. It's just play on, hand pass, and he was able to do that. Jai Simpkin had a really bad moment where he was caught holding the ball on the wing. That part wasn't the problem for me, but then right at the end is when he actually released the footy, sort of, I don't know if he hand passed it or he tunnel balled it out, but because it's built out to a Brisbane player, they were able to play on, take advantage and kick a goal. Rayner was hit inside 50. It was just that's stupid, and that's the thing that really frustrates North fans about Jai Simpkin at the moment, is he'll do a couple of really nice things but then balance it out with some really it's silly mistakes, is putting it really nicely. That wasn't the only bad moment that he had in the game, but probably one of the worst ones for me, not because it looked awful, but the result is, players know, and they're coached, if you get caught holding the ball, you've got to hold it in just long enough to give your teammates time to set up defensively. You don't want to give up a 50-metre penalty by mucking around with it too much, but you can't get up too quickly, or in this case, let the ball spill out. So that was really disappointing. We saw a couple of questionable decisions, like Toby Pink got a free kick gave against him for blocking when he got the footy and was able to put a spoil on, which does not make sense. You take the good with the bad there. That's just an unlucky one, but the commentators were mentioning, and I think it's fair, we were just very fumbly in this quarter. The difference between us and Brisbane was very much the cleanliness with the way that we picked it up and disposed of it. And that's what meant that Brisbane were able to go coast to coast and kick goals, whereas we just weren't quite able to get that final touch or to create space for ourselves. And when we did, we made silly mistakes. Cam Zurhaar had options, was running in 50 or running in from outside 50 and then hits the post. He could have kept going. He could have hand passed it over the top. That hurts. And unfortunately, I think going into half time, the scoreboard, it was a low scoring game, 20-40, but I think that was probably even favouring us a little bit, to be honest. I thought we probably deserved to be 4 or 5 goals down. Going in 20 points down, I thought was a really good result for us. And then I mean, the third quarter happened, which was a really, really good quarter for us. 3-1 in that quarter. Thought we were really desperate early. We came out after the halftime siren, raring to go. We put a lot of pressure on. We corralled them. We didn't allow Brisbane any easy touches. And, like I said, kicked a couple of goals. Simpkin intercepted and with a nice left foot hit Zurhaar inside 50, who goaled, which was a great start to the quarter. And that's what I'm talking about. Simpkin's a right footer. I thought he turned really nicely onto his left after taking intercept mark. A beautiful left foot kick inside 50 Cam Zurhaar. I'm not sure why he can't do those sorts of kicks with his right foot, but I guess that's the frustrating part about Simpkin, and he's not the only one. There are other players like him going through the middle of the ground that just seem to find ways to turn over the ball when you wouldn't think it's possible. But I digress. That was actually a nice disposal by him. Long sleeve Zurhaar is the Zurhaar we want to see. It was pretty cold down in Hobart, I gather, so Zurhaar had the long sleeves on, and I always feel like he stands out a bit more. I guess he probably does because he's one of the only players, if not the only player, with the sleeves on. But he certainly stood out in this game, and I actually thought had a pretty nice game. Not a perfect game. I mentioned that miss from late in the second quarter, but I thought he imposed himself pretty well. Soon after, Simpkins bursting forward, takes some bounces. I thought he was having a really nice patch try, Simpkin, but then just butchers the inside 50 kick. He had Larky one-on-one, and he somehow hit Jack Payne beautifully. So it's, again, keep running, take another bounce, or wait for Larky to lead and then hit him. Like, we just found ways to stuff it up where all of these things I'm talking about come back to the reason why, I guess, my overwhelming feeling was disappointment at the end of the game, because I just thought we had so much more to give and so many more opportunities. Georgie Wardlaw I mentioned him in the first quarter, he had another really nice kick inside 50 to hit Duursma, who missed a lot. There's a bit of a theme here. We had a really nice moment. We took a long time. I think we kicked it or switch kicked several times, and then took our time with deciding whether or not we kicked down the line. Eventually we did, and then Finn O'Sullivan just hit the pack beautifully, timed his run to perfection, was able to get the ball moving on quickly. Maley had some really nice hands, hit Disco Stevens. We kick a goal from Dylan Stevens. That was, to me, one of the highlights of the game, not because it was a perfect play, but it's the sort of play that is replicatable. It was fast ball movement. We hit the pack on the wing beautifully, and then we just moved the ball on. We were eager to get to the next player. So Finbar Maley actually got subbed out moments after that, but I thought, it was a nice bit of craft from him. A hand pass up to Dylan Stevens, who I thought had a bit of a really nice game, Dylan Stevens, and it was nice for him to kick a goal. Larky, unfortunately, had a really hot moment or moments in that third quarter. He did kick one goal, but had another couple of misses when we had the momentum and weren't able to quite drive home that momentum, which is, a bit of a similar tale for us. It's familiar. Anyway, we go into three-quarter time, 9 points down, and, with momentum, and I thought we carried that into the last quarter, to be honest. Duursma missed again, some really big misses for Duursma. I think it was a disappointing game for him, but a massive moment early on in that last quarter. Luke Parker wins a tackle holding the ball on Harris Andrews. Beautiful tackle, released one arm, or didn't tackle one arm, allowed Harris Andrews to get caught holding the ball. He reacted. I think Harris Andrews was looking for the dangerous tackle, which, you've seen them call, but I thought the fact that he had an arm free, Andrews, means that it's probably not going to be a dangerous tackle. I thought that Parker was just bringing him to ground, forcefully but not dangerously. And Harris Andrews reacted, resulted in a 50-metre penalty, and we're in it. That was the moment for me that I thought we're actually in with a chance here, because Parker drilled the goal, obviously, and all the momentum and the territory was ours for a long time. We had another one where Finn O'Sullivan didn't score from 50. Like, so many of these moments that you think, in that one, Finn O'Sullivan's kicking it from 50 out, just hit that point 15 metres out from goal. Even if it gets spoiled through, it's better than this fading for out on the full. Jacob Konstanty won a nice high tackle for a free kick and kicked a goal, and that took us to the lead. And again, I thought in that moment, we've taken the lead, we've taken it early in the quarter, we've given ourselves an opportunity to actually kick a couple more and kick away. Unfortunately, we just allowed Brisbane to answer. There's a couple of times where I thought, yep, we're away here, and Brisbane answered, and that was frustrating. But I also think you have to accept that they're the reigning premiers. They're a good team. They're going to do that. Jack Darling, who bobbed up a couple of times late, took a big mark and kicks a goal, and was also able to get one out the back a little bit later on. We allowed Rayner, like I said, to take a semi-contested mark after Xerri taps it straight down Neale's throat after we'd essentially kept Neale pretty much completely out of the game. That was disappointing. And then for me, it's the moment. There's a couple of minutes left, maybe a minute and a half. We just need to get the ball up our end. There's a massive mistake. Like, Tristan Xerri releases the hand pass. There's 3 players there that could have picked it up. For whatever reason, they all bungle it. George Wardlaw takes a long time picking the ball up after that, and then just kicks an absolute turnover down the wing and it's turned over at half forward. To me, that was the moment that I went, okay, we're not winning this, because how we didn't score from that was I just don't know. We had all the run, we had the bodies and the momentum. Our tails were up, and I don't think it was a bad hand pass from Xerri. I think it was a miscommunication on the players running past. They fumble it. George Wardlaw just too slow recovering it, and unfortunately, it's a moment missed. Couple of massive marks from Chom late in the game, intercepts that nearly won us the game. I thought his second one, then he made a really good decision. He switched the play with a long, it was a slow, but a long ball to a safe position. That's what allowed Konstanty and Dylan Stephens to essentially be running 70 metres out into a forward line. Unfortunately, again, I just thought we made a really, really bad decision. We should have kept running and kept overlapping to get Dylan Stephens in closer so that he could either hit a short target or at least get a score on the board. Because at that point, the score was a level and there's maybe 45 seconds left. That was the chance. We just had to score. But unfortunately, Jacob Konstanty went for a sort of medium to long range kick. It was spoiled by Harris Andrews out of bounds, and that was all she wrote. And so, for me, it's like I said, it's so many of those opportunities that were either out of bounds on the full or we didn't make the distance that just come back to hurt us here. We absolutely should have won this game. So that for me is why it's feelings, it's mixed feelings, it's disappointment. Obviously, it's fantastic that we competed against a really good side and we got ourselves into a winning position, but I just don't know how we didn't win. Like, I do, because we did it to ourselves. But so many of those opportunities were wasted, and I think, we'll look at a few stats as the game goes on. For me, it's a stat domination in some of the bigger areas of the game that disappoints me, because that again points to the fact that we should have won. So anyway, we take the 2 points. It's another good game. It's another promising step in the right direction, but ultimately just a point short of the ultimate victory. And a really tough one to evaluate. Story of the game, and I guess I've really touched on it, but for me it was just silly errors. When we can minimise those silly errors, we're going to win some games. The most notable was that Xerri hand pass that somehow missed 3 targets, or those 3 targets stuffed it up on the wing. Like, that was the glaring one for me, but there were more subtle ones. I spoke about that Dylan Stephens, Jacob Konstanty one with 45 seconds to go, but all those out in the fulls and not getting the distance also hurt. And then, again, I spoke about some of Simpkins' errors where he just butchered it going inside 50 or gave up a hold in the ball, play on advantage, opportunity. Our kicking efficiency or disposal efficiency wasn't good enough, 67 or 68% to Brisbane's 72. That's bang on average for them, whereas we were 8% down on our average. So that's not getting the job done. I would say, I don't have it in front of me, but I would say the kicking efficiency would be even worse than that. Just too many times we end up kicking to contest. I don't think we had heaps of howling turnovers in this game. I don't think that's a word, but horrific turnovers. It wasn't one of those games where we had a high number of those. It was just our inability to find targets in the forward half. Too often we were kicking to a contest or to an outnumber, and that's the reason why our forwards really struggled. The inside 50 camp was actually level at the end of the game, so there wasn't necessarily. Is that right? Is that true? I think that's true. Let me double check that. Yeah, 51 to 51. It was even, but I guess at the end of the day, it was just a matter of us not being able to convert those opportunities. We certainly had shots on goal, but we weren't able to score enough of those, and we missed some really good opportunities. I mentioned Zane Duursma. He had several good opportunities. Nick Larkey uncharacteristically missed a couple of opportunities in that third quarter. The Cam Zurhaar missed opportunity. Just it was a game of missed opportunities and opportunities that went begging because of skill errors or a lack of composure is the word I'm looking for on our behalf. So ultimately, that's why I think for me it was such a disappointing result. It's not because we were desperately unlucky. It's not because something went against us at the end. We just had so many opportunities to win it throughout the game. And we just don't know how to win at the moment. And I think we saw some good composure from the likes of Jack Darling and Luke Parker who've come across with some experience, and that both of them had some really big moments in that last quarter. That's why we got them across, because they're cool heads in moments like this. But yeah, the fact that we weren't quite able to get across the line speaks to holistically as a team, we're just not quite used to winning. And when we get ourselves or a nose in front, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to defend or change tactics to play with a lead late in the game. So I really hope that all of these lessons are being learned, and we're going to see some good stuff in the second half of the season. But at the moment, it's just... yeah, it's really tough to watch because, again, the last two games, I really think we should have won. I feel like I've hammered home that point. Let's move on. Shinboner of the week and the North Podium voting, and it was tough to pick a Shinboner of the week, not because there weren't good performances, but more so because there was just a nice even spread without there being a player that I thought, that absolutely is a standout. Tristan Xerri is pretty unlucky. I thought he had a really good performance in the ruck, and I'll touch on him in the voting in a minute. But I think for me, it was Charlie Comben and his late intercept marking. Like I mentioned, he did a bit of it in the first quarter or in the first half. And I thought he played solidly. And then, drifted in and out of the game. He certainly didn't make too many mistakes. He was caught on the lead several times, but that's going to happen. He's particularly with the ball movement that we allow sometimes. Our defenders are made to look silly from time to time. That's not on him. But I was super impressed with his massive grabs in that last quarter, in the last couple of minutes. He took some really nice intercept marks and then did something positive with it. It wasn't like he bombed it long in hope. I thought that he was proactive. And the fact that he's able to mark it and not just spoil it meant that we actually get possession back and we're able to drive it quickly forward. It's not, a stoppage or a loose ball. We've got possession. Let's quickly move it so we can get it up there before Brisbane are able to flood backwards. Yeah, I was just super impressed. He kept his feet. He got on with it. And it's the sort of thing that he did semi-regularly last year and kind of earned him all of that praise that he was getting last year. We haven't necessarily seen that much of it this year. We've seen flashes, but I thought this was a game where he put it all together, was able to do it in various points throughout the game. But like I said, those two massive ones late in the game were special, to be honest. I thought that should have been game-winning marks that he took. He did his part. I mentioned it earlier on, but the second one that he took a couple of steps in board and just bombed it, diagonally across the ground onto the other wing, and just freed up so much space for us on the fat side of the ground. It was a really nice kick. I do get a bit nervous when he's kicking it across goal, but in that moment, if he's going long and to the wing like that, I totally support, and I thought he did a fantastic job. So for me, he's definitely worthy of Shinboner of the week. I thought he did a fantastic job in those clutch moments, and yeah, nothing more that he could have done towards the end of the game. In terms of the North Podium voting, again, we didn't win the game, so I couldn't give anyone the 4 votes. But 3 votes, Tristan Xerri, I've got to give it to him. He was immense in the ruck, 19 disposals, 2 marks, 8 tackles, 12 clearances, 36 hit-outs, 14 of those to advantage, 4 inside 50s, and just did a bit of everything. I thought his around-the-ground kicking was fantastic. He had a couple of really nice sort of 30 to 35 metre kicks that, you wouldn't expect to see from a ruckman. You'd be more looking at that from a midfielder. Dominated in the ruck against the Big O and Darcy Ford at times. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in there. And yeah, for me, he was the best player on the ground. He throughout the game was fantastic with his ruck work. Took it out of the ruck a lot of times, and if he wasn't, he was punting it forward or punching it forward. I mentioned that he did tap it straight down Neale's throat at one point, but that's not on him entirely. That's on our mids to be making sure that we're reading at his taps and playing defensively on Neale, which we did a really good job of for most of the game. So for me, Xerri was immense. He was fantastic and certainly deserving of the three votes. I think if we'd been able to get across the line and he played a role in that last minute, it's a 4-vote game. Unfortunately, we weren't quite able to do that. And then a couple of players with the 2 votes. So Charlie Comben, I mentioned already. I'll just go through his stats. 21 disposals, 9 marks, 3 of those contested, 12 intercepts, and 95% disposal effectiveness. Nothing more to say from him. His late game was fantastic. His early game was fantastic. And I thought probably his best game for the year, holistically speaking, from Chom. Luke Parker was absolutely fantastic in this game. I thought particularly in that last quarter, he stood up, kicked a goal, won the next clearance. He was fantastic. 23 disposals, 1 goal, 4 marks, 8 tackles, 8 clearances, 2 goal assists, 6 inside 50s, and won a lot of contested footy. I thought he was big in the big moments, stood up and had a nice kick inside 50 at one point as well. So Luke Parker, that's what we got him across for. I mentioned him before in the same breath as Jack Darling. You want those players that you get across from other clubs to play the role that Luke Parker did in this game. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. And the other player to get the 2 votes, I wasn't sure if this was a 2 or a 1 vote game from LDU, but ultimately I just thought that his impact overall was too good for it to not be a 2 vote game. 32 touches, 5 clearances, 565 metres gained, 5 inside 50s, but a bit of a question mark with his disposal, only 60% disposal effectiveness, so you'd like that to be higher. But I thought his burst away from stoppage was some of his better stuff that we've seen from him this year. He was able to do it for the majority of the game. He was able to sidestep, didn't make some of those clangers that we've seen him do in other games. So the 2 votes, I think, was fair for me. I thought he had a really nice game overall. And then I'll quickly whip through the 1 voters here. Harry Sheezel playing off halfback like he has been for the majority of the year, 29 touches, 7 marks, 3 tackles, 6 intercepts, and did his best to propel the opposition. I don't think it was one of his better games, but I thought he was solid and played his role. Dylan Stephens, I mentioned during the game, 22 touches, a goal, 5 marks, 3 inside 50s. Probably the only ding on his game was I thought that he faded in the last quarter, and whilst he was there ready to make a really nice decision in that last moment and the ball didn't come to him, I thought, I would have liked to see him get himself involved a little bit more in that last quarter when the game was on the line, but again, played his role, and his last couple of games have been such an improvement from what we saw from him last year. Georgie Wardlaw, 19 disposals, kicked a goal, 5 tackles, 5 clearances, a goal assist, 4 inside 50s, but his disposal, similar to LDU, his disposal did hurt him, 53%, so that's kind of what's holding him back from being a 2. He did have some really nice kicks inside 50, which was promising to see. That can sometimes be an issue for him, but I thought probably besides those highlights, I'd like to see just a little bit more cleanliness from him. Also missed an opportunity for a second goal that he didn't get close to. So again, just another one of those ones where him and the rest of the team were trying their best, but just didn't quite have those finishing touches. So played his role, but again, just short of a 2. Cam Zurhaar's probably lucky to get a 1 or just on the precipice of that. I thought he played his role. I guess this is a good time for a reminder that if you're getting 1 vote, it just means you played your role for the team. And I thought Zurhaar's 2 goals, 15 disposals, 5 marks, 2 of those contested, couple of tackles and a goal assist. I think if he does that every game, we're pretty happy with him, but particularly the contested marks and the 2 goals. I love seeing him work up the ground as well. So I thought that he played his role. Similar, Jacob Konstanty, 12 disposals, kicked a goal, 4 marks, 1 of them contested, 5 tackles, 2 of those inside 50. That is the quintessential small forward or hard-working small forward game that we need from him. Moved the ball on quickly every time he got it. Didn't make too many mistakes except for that late game moment. So again, again, I thought he played his role. He's drifted in and out of other games this year. I thought this was one of those games where, he had 3 or 4 touches a quarter, and was able to do something with them. So I was really happy with his game. And the final one, Aidan Corr, I thought played really well in a flexible role. Spent some time on Charlie Cameron and some of the other time on the tools. And I thought it was a good return for a player coming back. Didn't really have a glaring error, but also didn't really have a moment where we go, oh my goodness, thank goodness for Aidan Corr. I just thought he had a game where didn't make a mistake and was able to impact the contest mostly positively. So from my perspective, if you're a defender and you're doing that, you're probably doing your job. So recapping that, Tristan Xerri 3, I think a standout best on ground. Luke Parker, Charlie Comben, and LDU 2. And then the 1 votes, Sheezel, Stevens, Wardlaw, Zurhaar, Konstanty, and Aidan Corr. Looking at the current North Podium standings, and Xerri is coming with a bullet. He's moved into second position. Sheezel outright first on 12, Xerri 11, and then it's Paul Curtis. Just imagine how well he'd be going if he'd been able to play the last 2 games, and maybe with him playing the last 2 games, we win. Honestly, that thought's actually really annoyed me. Anyway, Curtis and LDU are on 9, so equal third, and then Simkin Parker 8, Powell, Larkey, McDonald 7, and then it falls away to 5s and 4s after that. So coming up, we're heading towards the halfway mark, not quite there yet, but 9 games down, certainly past the 1/3 mark, and we're seeing some familiar names, but I also think it's nice to see a bit of a spread there, and it's not just, last year it was Sheezel, LDU, and Xerri absolutely running away with it, so I guess I am pleased with this voting system that we're able to see some role players and some players that, are consistent, getting some votes as well. I'll take this opportunity just to thank everyone for being a supporter of the show. I really appreciate it. If you could share it with any North Melbourne fans that you know and help me get the word out there, I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe on your chosen podcast service, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Get involved with my social media accounts. I'm at NorthPod or at NorthPod Show on all of those. And you can also support me in an additional way by buying me a coffee, or I'll choose to buy a soft drink, usually a vanilla Coke with that supply. The link's in the show notes. And I'd like to thank Gordon Harrison this week for buying me a coffee. Really appreciate it. Exactly what I needed this week. It's been a long couple of weeks for me personally, so I do really appreciate that, Gordon. And thank you to everyone who has supported the show to this point, either on the Buy Me a Coffee link or just listening and sharing the show. I really do appreciate it. Kanga clipboard time. It's that time where we just look at some other stray thoughts from the game. And I think for me, one of these games coming up, we simply have to use our clearance and territory domination to just create a bit of an avalanche. We've seen opposition teams do that to us so many times over the past few years, where they get a run on, they just lock the ball in their forward half, win the ball at stoppage and kick goals. And we're doing most of that. We're just not able to kick the goal after goal after goal. So many of our goals are really hard to earn. We're not kicking enough of those really easy, so to speak, in inverted commas, goals, which is why we're just not quite able to get ourselves across the line at the moment. We play so well, it's just that final connection piece, and it's frustrating. We won the clearances 47-32. That is a domination against a really strong midfield. I mean, they're the reigning premiers. Lachie Neale's through there, Josh Dunkley, both the Ashcrofts, Hugh McCluggage and Zach Bailey also move through there. It's a really nice midfield, as you'd expect from the reigning premiers, and we smashed them at clearance. So for me, you've got to get more reward than we did from winning the clearances by a factor of 15. That's certainly not good enough, and it's a function of the sorts of players that we have going through there. I've talked about it, time and time again. LDU, Simkin, and Wardlaw, none of them are gun kicks inside 50 by any stretch. They're good at winning the ball and they can move it forward from stoppage. But how often, in particular Simkin, have we seen him get the ball at stoppage and just snap kick it over his head and have a ball that nearly goes more sideways than it does forward for us? We certainly saw moments of it in this game with Wardlaw having a couple of really nice kicks inside 50. And I think he's pretty composed with the footy. It's just he's just not a good kick, and we've got to find a way to get him involved in such a way that he's not the finishing touch on it from a kicking point of view as often as possible. But yeah, even that last entry from Jacob Konstanty, like he had Stevens running 3. It's just decision making in our forward half that's costing us at the moment, and it's costing us the ability to kick easy goals. So whilst there are certainly times where we're kicking over Larky's head or we're not competing when the ball hits the ground, we've seen that kind of stuff, but I really think it's that connection piece between the middle part of the ground and the forward half of the ground that is just not quite clicking. It's close, but we're not quite there, and I hope that we're able to get there in the next few weeks, and I mean next week really, to be honest, because that is a super winnable game. We'll talk about that in a minute at the end of the pod. Second dot point here, and I mentioned it throughout the game, I think Zane Duursma just seems a bit lost at the moment. Missed some really gettable shots on goal, finished with just the one behind. He's not flying at it and grabbing at it like he did early last year when he was playing some good footy, and just not winning enough of it, to be honest. Like, even if he's not kicking goals, as that half forward, you've got to get up and make an impact by getting disposals. He's just probably not doing that enough for me. So I do think he'll get next week against Richmond, but I expect that when Paul Curtis comes back, I'd say that he's on the chopping block unless he's able to have a really nice game next week. We know that there's no room for him to play some midfield time at the moment, so he's got to be really good on the wing or really good off half forward, and he just hasn't been able to establish himself in either of those roles as yet. So for me, it's just a watch. He's a second-year player, similar to McKercher. It's second-year blues to an extent because you've been scouted a little bit. Sort of teams at least know a little bit about how you're going to play, and I think possibly he's not getting that run and jump from the side that we've seen him get, or we saw him get early on last year. I know he's a good mark, so he's got to find a way to recapture that. He doesn't need to be kicking bags of goals, but he has to be marking the footy, and he's just not doing that at the moment. So for me, needs to go back to the VFL probably after next week and take some mark and kick some goals. Kick 2 or 3 goals, but get your marking right. That's what I want to see from him, and that's what we're not seeing at the moment. On the positive front, I thought defensively this was another success for us. We only conceded 71 points, and the jobs that we did on some of those key Brisbane players really speaks volumes for the fact that we were able to do what we set out to do. Lachie Neale had 17 disposals, 4 clearances, minimal impact. So I mentioned that one moment in the last quarter where Xerri popped it straight down to Lachie Neale. That aside, you'd have to say he had a quiet game. It's not going to be a game, it shouldn't be a game that he's getting Brownlow votes. He's one of those players that can get a Brownlow vote standing still, I think, but minimal impact. I thought Tommy Powell played a big part of that, but certainly it was a team effort, and I think that was the case for most of our defensive work. It wasn't, a tagging one player shutdown role. It was a team defense with obviously some contingency plans and some plan A's and B's and C's for how we want to handle these players. So I thought, by and large, we played Lachie Neale really well. His impact was minimal, and we were able to take his impact out of the game. Charlie Cameron, 1 goal, 9 touches. He's the sort of player that can really torch us. And I thought between Aidan Corr and Luke McDonald and some of the others back there, Riley Hardiman, for example, I thought again it was a really nice even team spread, making sure that he didn't have an impact. The goal that he kicked was a bit of a wonder goal from the boundary. He had another opportunity in the third quarter that he wasn't quite able to kick, or maybe it was the early in the last quarter. But besides that, really didn't have an impact. So again, for me, he's their most dangerous forward, and the fact that we virtually shut him out of the game was fantastic. And then you even look at the tools at either end. Logan Morris, who is a young tool, but I've seen him take apart games with his marking. He had almost 0 impact. Harris Andrews had his moments, but certainly wasn't able to impact the game with rebounding and intercept marking. So I think you've got to take that. That's, for me, one of the advantages of having Jack Darling in the side. Even if Harris Andrews spent a lot of time on Finbar Maley, I thought Maley was able to take him out of those dangerous positions. So, look, we're obviously able to negate those types of players, and then by the same token, look, Zorko had 39 off halfback. You'd certainly like that to be lower. Andrews and Rayner, so not Andrews, Hipwood and Rayner are able to kick 3 goals each. You probably would like to limit that, but you can't completely negate everyone. I think you've got to pick your poison. If you look at those players that I've listed, Neale and Cameron would be 1 and 2, and then probably Harris Andrews 3. in terms of who you'd absolutely like to stop if you can. So, it wasn't a defensive masterclass by any stretch, but I think at the start of the day, you've got to decide who are we happy to get beaten by? Like who are the players that we simply do not want to hurt us? And like I said, Neale and Cameron are two of the players at the top of that list. So the fact that as a team we were able to negate them was really promising, because we just, the last several years, star players or really nice small forwards from the opposition have torched us. So I think that's a sign that we're tracking in the right direction defensively, and as a group we're finding ways to defend. And the last dot point here, it's another game that we've competed in for a long period, and I think we have to take the positives from that. I'm certainly trying my best to take the positives from that. It's 3 games on the trot that we haven't conceded 100 points, so that's a big tick. We conceded 100 points 6 games in a row to start the year. Now we've had 3 games where we haven't, so that's fantastic. Since that Good Friday shellacking, it's been much, much better defensively, but we simply have to win next week. I'm going to touch on it in a minute. We cannot afford to waste this positive form that we've got. We've got this game and then one more before the bye. We simply have to beat Richmond, because otherwise all of this improvement is just it's not going to mean anything in terms of our morale and the way that we're feeling, because it's not converting to wins. So let's get to our last segment and talk about the game next week. Around the street, and I guess I'm going to very briefly touch on the VFL game. I haven't caught any of this one, so to be fair, I don't have a lot to say about it. It was a loss to the Brisbane VFL side, 65-92, so a comfortable loss, and one that we fought our way back into in the last quarter. By the looks of it, it wasn't looking good at 3/4 time. Wilfield found plenty of the ball, 25 disposals, 5 clearances, 7 tackles, so certainly done himself no issues going back into the VFL and having an impact. It was nice to see Braden George kick a goal in his second game back from injury, and Griffin Logue found a bit of it down back, 17 disposals. But like I said, looking at the stats and I guess knowing what I know about the players playing there's certainly no one that's jumping out for a recall next week. I think I'd expect the side to be pretty similar, if not the same, going into the game against Richmond. If anything, it'd be a slight team balance change. I'm not expecting to see wholesale changes. And then I guess, looking at the Richmond game, they are coming off a tight win against the Eagles at a massive tackle late to save the game. If they win, they will put some serious distance between us and them on the ladder. Whereas if we win, we close the margin to 2 points, and I think we get closer to stepping our way out of second last position, which is a really sad goal to have, but I think that's where we're at the moment. We've just got to step our way up the ladder, and the first step right now is to get ourselves ahead of Richmond on the ladder, and we simply must win this game if we're going to do that. It is Sunday, what date is that? May 18. It's the 1:10 game at the G. We do not play at the MCG very often, so for me, it's a must-win. I don't have a lot of good recent memories at the MCG. The one that I think about is that game a couple of years ago where Chom broke his ankle against Melbourne and we got belted by about 100 points. That's what I think of when I think of the MCG, but hopefully we can make a much nicer memory here. Our percentage is 78, theirs is 69. That says to me that holistically we're playing better footy, even though we've got 1.5 wins and they currently have 3. We know they had that just out-of-the-box performance against Carlton to start the year. They've beaten West Coast. I don't remember who their other win was. I could look it up now, but we simply have to win. If we're able to win, we get ourselves within 2 points of them. Xerri needs to dominate in the middle like he's been doing all year, get it down to our mids, and from there we simply have to convert our opportunities when we get it inside 50. We cannot afford to waste the ball going inside 50. Larky needs to kick a bag, or Zurhaar. One of those two needs to get off the chain. If we're not able to win this game, it's probably the first time that I'm going into a game going, we have to win. And part of it is obviously the disappointment that we've had over the past 3 weeks. Part of it is the fact that we should be somewhat on the way up this season, not completely, but we've got to be improving. And part of it is, I think, for morale at this point and for supporters to feel like we're moving in the right direction, we simply have to beat a side that is at rock bottom right now. Like, leaving West Coast aside, because they're a bit of a different story. Richmond's had the recent success. They're having that slump now as a result of that. They're a team that we simply have to beat based on our development. So I know that, doesn't give us a lot of wriggle room next week, but I think all North Melbourne fans should go in feeling nervously confident against the Tigers. I certainly will be. I'm hoping to get to the game. We'll see how we go with my son, Raf. We'll see what the weather's like and what he's like on the day, but I'll certainly be watching with bated breath. And, like always, I will speak to you after the game at some point. And, have a fantastic week. As always, go North. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. If you give me a rating or review on your podcast service, that would be much appreciated. And please follow me on all social media at North Pod Show. I'm on X or Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also very active on the North Melbourne subreddit. Hope you'll join me for the next episode.